In today's business world, change is the only constant, and mastering transformation is the ultimate key to success. Welcome to Shift and Thrive. I'm your host, Natalie Nathanson. Each week, we'll bring you conversations with CEOs who delve into how they successfully drove critical change in their organization. This show is sponsored by Magnitude Consulting, bringing you the thinking power of a growth consultancy and the getting it done power of a full-service B2B marketing agency. I am really looking forward to today's episode, especially because today's guest is someone I've known and respected and collaborated with for over 15 years since our time working together at a business intelligence software startup. He also has deep expertise selling innovative tech into the federal government, which is an area we haven't covered much on the show, so I'm excited to geek out a bit together there. But first, let me give him a proper introduction. He is a founder, advisor, and investor who has built his career at the intersection of technology, government, and complex enterprise sales. Earlier in his career, he held multiple senior and executive level sales leadership roles, leading high-performing teams across public sector and commercial markets, navigating some of the most complex and demanding buyer environments in tech. Today, he's the founder and CEO of a firm dedicated to helping technology companies successfully enter and scale within the federal government market. And through his work, he partners closely with founders and executive teams, bringing a seasoned operator's perspective to revenue strategy, positioning, and execution in highly regulated and high-stakes environments. He is the founder and CEO of Marion Square. Harvey Morrison, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much, Natalie. Really excited to be here. And wow, has it been 15 years that we've worked together? I think we both started when we were 12, right? Is kind of the message.
We must have.
Yeah, I'm going to go with that. So no, really excited to be here. And like I say, we've had the opportunity to collaborate, on a bunch of different projects over the years. And so working with you on this one or being a part of your podcast is great. So thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, very excited to dive in. And I know, you've advised a lot of tech CEOs trying to break into, a range of complex high stakes markets, and especially in the federal government. So I wanted to start with the federal side. And when founders really think about expanding into government, what are the most expensive mistakes that they make? Things that cost, time, money, momentum, any of the above?
That's a good question. Look, the federal government, and I always advise organizations about this that I talk to, can be a real game changer for companies. If you think about Qualcomm, if you think about Oracle, if you think about Palantir, all those organizations really started with the genesis of a federal project, right? So Oracle came out of the CIA, Qualcomm started as an SBIR. So I mean, government can be a real game changer, but it can also be a real suck and waste of time and resources if you don't go about it right. And I think, in looking at it over the years, where I have seen the biggest waste of resources and time is just assuming the federal government is one market, and I'm diving into that. And I just want to go meet anybody and everybody that I can to talk about my product or my service. In government, everything government does really runs around their budget cycles. And you can meet with somebody and they can say, hey, I love your technology. It's the greatest thing in the world. It can save me a whole lot of time and money, improve my mission. But if they don't have a budget or a mandate to buy it, they're just not going to be able to do that. So we always advise our clients to start going into the government space with a really solid foundation and knowledge of which agencies actually have a budget or a mandate for what they're doing, which programs are a fit and are funded for what they're doing. And that's where you really want to start your go-to-market, right? Understand that, and then build your whole go-to-market around that particular piece of it. That'll prevent you from running around the beltway, having lots of great meetings, and then not getting any business at the end of the day. So that's probably, we work with a mixture of small companies and large companies as well. But the small companies, that's probably the biggest thing we hear when we hear about mistakes is we didn't know where to start. So we just started, and any meeting was a good meeting. And we've had 50 meetings and haven't sold anything, right? That's probably the biggest. Not properly targeting. And now that kind of flows also into the hiring piece of this as well. We've had some companies not do the research, go out and hire what they thought was, the best representative to take their product to market, only to find out that, our market maybe isn't in Department of Justice. Our market is Department of Defense. And we probably should have hired somebody that had background in that versus somebody that had a background somewhere else. So again, I think it all starts with knowing who your customer is and which one of those actually has a budget or a mandate to do something.
Yeah, I think that's so important. I mean, what you just explained with the like companies hiring the best reps, so to speak. I think that's just such a prevalent lesson. I mean, we've seen that in other environments too. Like on the go-to-market side, you hire this like, you know, really strong like digital marketing lead, and then you realize that you actually need a channel marketing strategy, and right, so you're kind of like stuck at least temporarily with the wrong person. So I think that don't invest too fast and kind of take those steps to do your homework first. And I think the nice thing about government is it's published, right? So
Exactly.
you have the ability to get a lot more intel than you do on the commercial side.
Exactly. Yeah. So that is where you really need to start. When we feel like we've got a really good process down to look through the budgets, I mean, we're looking at them all the time. We're following what's going on Capitol Hill from, hey, what are the new mandates and things that are starting to come out? So having a really good working knowledge of that, I think, is what's critical to building a really solid go-to-market.
For sure. And, I want to get more into some of the kind of nitty gritty of the federal government and get some more advice from you. But I want to take a bit of a sidestep because you and I do go way back. And I know firsthand, you spent many years on the in-house side, many years now leading your organization, helping companies navigate federal. But I want to hear kind of what made you start your company? What made you switch from being kind of on the in-house side to starting your own firm? And what did that journey look like for you?
Well, I think fundamentally, like I'm a big believer that government in general need to work more closely with industry, right? I think there's a lot of innovative startup companies out there, innovative technology companies out there that could really benefit the government and in turn the citizens. But government just doesn't know about, right? So that's really kind of underlying where we like to come in and help and what drives us. But I guess my origin story, if you will, for Marion Square is, as you know, I spent a lot of years running sales and sales programs for a lot of venture-backed software companies. Closing the first deals, getting the contracts in place, putting the channels in place, and then we would sell the companies, and we would kind of move on to the next one. And after doing that 2 or 3 times, I started getting calls from our former CEOs or our former board members or DCs. And they would say, hey, we've got this company. We think it's a really good fit for government. Could you just take a look at it? They don't know where to start. They don't know what to do. Could you have a conversation with the CEO? And I would always do it, right? Just as just being friendly and helping somebody else out. But after about 4 or 5 of those, I thought to myself, you know what? Hey, there's probably a business here, right? Where organizations really don't know where to start, how to start, what to do. Could we programatize that and provide that as a service to organizations? And that's really the how the company got started was I just got so many calls from folks that it just dawned on me one day that, hey, I don't need to do a lot more market research to see if there's product market fit here. I'm getting called regularly, so I know there's product market fit here, and that was the foundation of the company.
I love that. Well, when it starts with demand and real interest, there's
Yeah.
something there. I'm
Yeah.
curious, what were kind of the bigger differences or maybe unexpected areas for you in kind of going out on your own? Anything kind of easier, harder than what you expected?
Yes. So what was harder than I was expecting was dealing with like setting up and actually managing the day-to-day pieces of the company, right? So are you properly registered? Do you have a finance system? So it's all those things around the company. Because when you start, you think, I'm just going to execute. I know how to execute. I'm just going to do that. But to set up and properly run a business that can scale and be there the long time, you really have to take a look at all the other pieces to a business, right? And that was probably initially that was probably the hardest thing for me, right? I mean, we had a partnership with Carasoft coming right out of the gate, so we had, I think, a good book of business that we could start to work from. So I wasn't overly concerned about business. I mean, we always want to grow more, as a small business, you always want more clients and how do you scale and how do you grow? But we had a good base foundation for that. But I think it was making sure that I put the right, um, legal, all those sorts of things that underpin a business, making sure those were secured and not like, let me just band-aid that together and move on. Because if you kick that can down the road, there's never a good time to do it. And if you don't just do it from the start, it's going to end up coming back and biting you, every time you turn around. So make sure you get all that taken care of and set up first and right from the beginning.
I think that's a good one. You're bringing me back to the early days of Magnitude and picking kind of time tracking software for the first time, and our HR and kind of payroll services and all of
Exactly.
that is, not exactly my favorite cup of tea, but to your point, like the things that need to happen. And then I think the interesting thing running a business is, right, it's a moving target. Your market isn't static. The business
Yep.
continues to grow, hopefully, as ours have. And then how you need to show up as a leader changes along with that.
Some folks look at it and go, yeah, I don't care what HR system or I don't care what payroll system, just put one in, let's go. But you really have to sit and think, hey, I'm not going to run this business on my own. And I'm going to have employees. And I need to make sure this is the right thing for them, right? So don't take a real short-sighted approach to this, because you want your employees to have the systems that they need so they're not thinking about it or worrying about it or not able to get their job done. So you really need to take the time to make sure you set that up, because it's not just, hey, for me, I can get what I need. I don't need all this other things. You have to think, hey, I got one employee, but I'd like to have 10. So what's going to enable me to do that? And what's going to make sure those employees are happy and productive, and want to be part of this team. And so you got to think about that too, as you're putting all that together.
I'm curious to ask, and I maybe should already know this by now, but how did you get into the federal space to begin with?
Yeah, yeah, that's a good one. So I was working for a startup here on the East Coast, and it was back when, as a startup, you had like a big swath of the country as your territory. And I went to the Citadel, so I have a background in, DoD and military. I was Navy, Marine Corps, ROTC. A lot of friends of mine actually ended up going in and serving. So I had that kind of background. And I remember one day I went to the CEO of our company and I said, hey, I've got Northern Virginia, Washington, D.C., Maryland, those areas. What is our plan or strategy for the federal government? And our CEO looked at me and said, that's a really great question. The board asked me that. Why don't you put something together and come back to me and let me know what you want to do with that space? And I laughed because I said, I got into it because I was just dumb enough to know that, like, these things I'm thinking can't possibly happen. And I didn't let like, some people get into the government and they're paralyzed by, oh my gosh, there's all this process and there's all this. And I just was dumb enough not to even know about it. And I just dove in and kind of went after it. You had to pretty much learn everything because you were a small business, right? So you didn't have, oh, I've got a contracts person that handles that and have a marketing person that handles that. You kind of had to figure all that out on your own. And I guess I was fortunate enough to have CEOs that initially that wanted to really get into this business and were patient enough with me to kind of put the plans and learn as they went along. But again, I just tell folks I was just dumb enough of the knowledge of this is really hard to just jump in and get started. So that's my story on how I got into government.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I was just talking to somebody yesterday. He's the CEO of an MSP that now has a number of like SaaS products. But he was brought into the organization initially as a research manager, and saw an opportunity with some like federal contracts, had never sold into federal government. And sure enough, 2 years later, they had like 4 contracts. And then, now he's moved a couple roles in the organization and is now running it. But I love the gusto that it takes to see that opportunity and then, propose it and go for it.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's been a great run. I really enjoy it.
Let's talk a little bit more about government. And I know, like, even from the consumer standpoint, or for anyone here that's like listeners that are not familiar with the government space, there's obviously a lot of noise around like government spending and elections and shifting priorities and budget headlines and all of that. So, for the CEOs and other executives listening who have never sold into government, how should they be thinking about kind of what's real, what's rhetoric, like what's actually changing now and how federal agencies are kind of approaching or looking at technology?
This administration has really taken a different approach to technology than the previous administration. The previous administration really was focused around, guardrail, ensuring safety and those sorts of things, which I'm not saying, right or wrong. That was their approach. This administration is really about leveraging technology to reduce cost, leveraging technology for efficiency, and then how do we get that technology really at speed, right? How do we quickly do this? How do we take down regulation? How do we take down barriers to entry for maybe non-traditional organizations to be able to get into government? So, like we talked during our webinar earlier, DOW and CIA are great examples. They've recently launched new acquisition strategies that have clearly stated in the mandates, we're looking for commercial off-the-shelf software that we can acquire quickly, we can test quickly, and we can rapidly deploy out to the entire organization. So that was a big shift from when I started into government. When I started selling into government, if you bought a box of paper clips, it was the exact same process. I'm exaggerating a little, but if you bought a box of paper clips, it was almost the same process as buying a battleship, right? The long drawn out procurement cycles, you have to run through all these different requirements gathering. And in this process, and this federal government today understands, at least if you read into the policies and the mandates that are out there, that software moves very quickly, right? It's always turning over. It's agile. New features and functions come out. And they want to make sure they can take advantage of that. And then the second thing they understand is, hey, we used to buy everything from like 5 or 10 primes. They don't have the best capability at all times. And there are new and innovative approaches that can be applied to government problems that can solve them much better. How do we open the aperture to make sure we're seeing those organizations and giving those organizations an opportunity to compete? So that, I think, has been the big shift in government over the last few years. And again, I think it gets back to what we talked about earlier, Natalie, is the importance of understanding which programs are out there that you're a fit for, understanding the procurement process and how to plug into that process, and then being able to clearly articulate, hey, this is how we work. This is how we fit into that process. This is the problem we solve. This is how we improve the mission. I think that's really critical for folks thinking about government today. I think the opportunity for organizations that provide innovative technology that solve problems government's looking for, it's a great time and a great opportunity pursuing that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I love the recognition of it, that, right, underpinning all of this is that this technology is a competitive advantage. And right, historically, government hasn't had the brand that you think of them as being kind of leading edge in technology. And, without getting us into like any geopolitical discussions, like it feels like we're in a world where we need that. So it's good. It's good to see that happening. I'm curious if you have any examples that come to mind. You don't have to name a company by name, but like an example of kind of a more innovative tech or something that, the government was interested in that maybe historically they would not have been, either a company you worked with or another example that comes to mind.
Yeah, so we're actually working with a few different companies. And one of the key areas that we're seeing is this whole notion around skills in across government employees. They haven't really looked at this in the past, right? A lot of promotions, a lot of people that got moved around, a lot of hiring that happened based on sort of legacy things like, hey, I've been here the longest, so I should get promoted, or hey, we need to start a new department, so let's just go hire a bunch of other people, right? And a great example of this is I was having a conversation the other day with some folks in the Army Reserve, and they're saying, hey, look, Army has posted in the past, we need to go hire a bunch of consultants because we need capabilities in this area. So let's go hire a bunch of outside consultants. And the general in the reserve said, you don't need to go hire anybody. I've got all those people with those skills in my unit right here. You just don't know it, right? So there's this whole movement out there now around let's get a skills mapping capability that commercial clients use every day today to map the skills that we have in an organization, right? And then be able to say, how do we fill these holes with people we already have? Like, we don't need to go hire people or train a whole bunch of folks on something brand new. We have the skills there, right? So there's this whole skills management um, technology layer out there that commercial clients are using that government's really never used, that they're now starting to think about and integrate into how they manage and run their entire organizations and operations.
I think that's a great example and a perfect one of like, the things that are maybe more obvious to us in the commercial space, but still lots of like runway and lots of opportunity in government.
Exactly. Yeah, it was interesting because we did some work for this company, and they said, "Hey, we'd like to see, looking backwards, like how big is the number or the dollar value of contracts for our 3 competitors over the last 4 years in government?" And it was minuscule, minuscule. And if you'd stopped there, you would have said, "Don't go into government. Like, run away from it. There's not enough business there for you at all." But then if you start looking, there were 3 executive orders that came out. And if you dug into the budget, like OPM, Office of Personnel Management, which is the HR division for government, was going to spend $1 billion over the next 4 years establishing a program like this. And then there was another big program called USA Hire, which is going to spend, $94 million a year over. So all of a sudden you look and go, wow, this is a rapidly expanding space. Yeah, don't look over the past, look at the future. This is really where they're going to need to bring in a tool like yours. So it was quite an interesting project that we did.
Yeah, for sure. I want to ask you too about kind of the expected impact of like the next elections, right? So how much of this is administration specific versus kind of trends that you're seeing that you believe will continue?
I personally don't think these acquisition changes that we're seeing now are going to alter very much. And the reason I tell you that is again, if you look at how CIA, DOW, and others bought solutions in the past, they bought them based on a hardware solution model. Because that's, 20 years ago, that's how everything was bought, was a hardware, right? The government has now realized everything, even hardware that you buy, is driven by software, right? And I think that's a fundamental shift that's being made. And that's where you're seeing a lot of these changes coming from an acquisition perspective. And I don't think that's going to change going forward. I really don't. What may change going into the next, depending upon who wins, is the level of regulation or guardrails that get put around things like AI. Right now, those guardrails are down, right? It's like, hey, we have to keep up with, other nation states from an AI perspective. It's imperative that we win, is this administration's mantra, right? So a lot of those things have come down. That may be relooked at in the next administration. But other than that, I don't think the acquisition, I think they're seeing software's got to be acquired totally different than hardware. And I think that change is going to stay.
Which I think goes back to your point about, right, like regardless, you want to do that research, do your homework first, see what's out there, and then make the strategic decision.
So I'll make one comment on that too. And as a taxpayer, I hate it. As somebody that advises government folks and how to sell into government, I love it. Regardless of the administration and regardless of what anybody says, you watch the budgets, they go up every year. So just something to think about.
Yeah.
It's like a recession-proof environment.
Hey, this is Natalie, your Shift and Thrive host. After chatting with lots of CEOs, one thing is crystal clear. Leveling up your company means having a killer go-to-market strategy. That's what my crew at Magnitude Consulting does every day. If you're trying to step up your marketing game, whether it's strategizing, accelerating your pipeline, expanding into new markets, or getting into AI and automation, let's talk. No pitch, no pressure, just good conversation. Visit shiftandthrivepodcast.com/Natalie to schedule a time. Can't wait to connect. I want to talk a little bit about like more tactically in government. And I know messaging is an area where I get involved, my firm gets involved, and where we see a lot of companies stumble. And I think in large part, like what works in commercial, like enterprise sales and marketing, like doesn't translate into government. So curious to hear from you, like what's your view on what are the things that matter most when companies are making that shift?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I see companies come into it and they go, oh, we know we're a fit for this. and then they try to communicate their message to a government client, and they're using, retail examples, financial services examples, because that's what they have, and it really doesn't translate, right? I think this is really important with these recent acquisition changes and those types of things that have come out. Is you really have to understand an agency's mission and how you're improving that mission. I mean, that fundamentally, if you want to have a substantive conversation with an agency, that's what you need to fundamentally understand, right? You need to understand the executive orders that have come out, the mandates that are coming down from the White House, OMB, those other areas, and how those affect an agency and how you can enable agencies to be compliant with those mandates and things that are coming in. Government, I mean, look, you have to show how you can fundamentally you have to show this is how we can help you be compliant with the things you have to be compliant with. Then the second thing is, okay, now we can show you how to do that in a more efficient and effective manner, right? In the past, it was how can we help you be compliant? And nobody really cared about the efficiency and the cost effectiveness of it. With the advent of Doge and other things, that now becomes a secondary piece that has to go along with that. If you go into an organization, an agency, and you can't talk to them about how you help them become compliant with the standards that they're held to, if you can't help improve their mission outcome, there's no reason for them to talk to you. And then the second thing then you have to add on to that is now this is the real differentiator. We can help you be compliant. We can help you improve your mission, and we can do it very cost effectively and efficiently.
Yeah. I think there's an element that you're speaking to here that's right, like the translation. You have to speak their language, understand kind of all of the drivers. But the reality is there are like the different terminology, and you don't talk about like we're the best AI powered modernization platform, right? You want to talk about specifics, like we reduce processing time by X percentage over this many months by doing XYZ, right? So it's a different mindset. And I think that can be hard for folks initially to like wrap their head around, but then once they do, it's, it goes a long way.
A great example is like the VA. Take that in mind, right? Like we can help you process these VA forms faster, so you're compliant with the government regulation that requires you to do that. Oh, and in doing this, we're going to improve the citizen experience, which is another thing you're taxed with, right? Veterans coming in, we want great ratings from veterans because they can get access to their services and things that they need a whole lot quicker. Oh, and right, this is the new piece of it. We can do that with 10 less people managing the system than what you have today, right? That's kind of how you need to think about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
We can improve your mission, which is making veterans happy by processing these forms way much quicker, which is what your mandate is to get these forms processed. And we can do it with less people in a quicker time frame. Just as an example to think about it.
Before we like move off of government, because I do have other topics I want to get to with you. But what do you see as far as resourcing mistakes? You talked a bit earlier about with the sales example of like hiring this like perfect salesperson, but for the wrong agency, for example. Are there others that you see on the go-to-market side that are worth like leaders thinking about?
Yeah. So the other one is a lot of leaders come into it and think I have to hire a salesperson, right? And if you really need to look at your go-to-market, right? Again, that gets back to the research. Like, is your solution something government's going to actually buy? Or are you going to be integrated into a larger platform that government will buy? So keep in mind, government really doesn't buy technology. They buy more of a capability, meaning we want a solution that is integrated, installed, and running that provides this outcome. We're paying for outcome, right? And typically what that means is we're going to hire a large system integrator to pull all the pieces together, get the solution installed, get it, up, running, going, and operationalize it, and use the system integrator are going to run it every day for us for the next 3 years as this contract goes. So if that's the model, sometimes I tell organizations, think about maybe you don't need a sales rep. going around to different agencies and having the conversations. Maybe you need a really good channel person or business development person that understands the large system integrators and the primes, and those need to be your target market as you launch into government. You may get a better return making that discussion or having that discussion or that resource versus a sales rep going into an agency and having the agency go, this is great, but we just awarded a contract to name your system integrator, right? To provide us with that capability. That's really your customer. So sometimes we have that discussion. Well, more than sometimes, or quite a few times we have that discussion with founders that say, hey, I don't have a lot of resources. Maybe I can hire one or two from a sales perspective. But we go, maybe you don't want to hire two salespeople. Maybe you want to hire one salesperson and one channel or business development person. Or maybe you want to hire two channel and business development people, because if you get in with the right organizations, they like your technology, they build it as part of their solution, they all of a sudden become your sales team. So just something to think about there as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think to that point, like there's really no one size fits all, and you need to look at your solution and where the opportunity is and then design around that, which, we have very similar conversations on the marketing side of things, whether like commercial or government, of just, being thoughtful about those decisions. And then, like there's a right time and right place. Like once you're kind of proven, you're established, or you're all in, then it's looking at what kind of support do you need around that person, right? And that kind of enablement, working with a firm like yours. Like we've come in on the marketing side to support kind of the content that the salesperson needs, but all really being very, very measured about what you need and when.
Yeah, no, and I think that's a real, I'll kind of switch the tables. I think that's a real value that you all add, Natalie, in the organizations that we've worked with is we can identify the opportunities for them. We can identify the path to market for them. But that piece that you all provide, which is that dedicated government content, right, cannot be, the importance of that cannot be undervalued, right? You spend a lot of time getting somebody on the phone, getting a meeting, and they go, hey, send me some follow-up information. You don't want to ruin it by making it just a generic piece, right? You've got to make sure it addresses a lot of the government talk, or government speak or government language, if you will, and just has that look and feel of government. So the work that you all do in that area is I think really critical. We've seen it firsthand.
Well, thank you. And I think, we're talking about misconceptions earlier. I think one of them is that it doesn't have to be a huge undertaking or like a long and arduous undertaking, right? It's like coming in, seeing where the need is, and starting with the highest priority, highest impact areas so that you aren't caught like flat footed. Like you give the example of, giving retail messaging to government, right? You want to have those, if you don't have the case studies yet, you give the use cases that are comparable at least, and kind of work with what you have, get it up there, get it out through your selling channels, and then build on.
Yeah, we talk to our clients, and it's funny, we talk to them about two things: contracting and the marketing piece of it. And we talk to them about that early on, and they look at us sometimes and go, well, we haven't even had a meeting yet. Why don't we think about that? I'm like, because we're going to work hard. We're going to identify the opportunities. We're going to get you a meeting. And in that meeting, they're going to ask you two questions. Okay, I love it. Do you have some follow-up information you can send me? And you're going to look at them and go, no, we have to create some, which is not a good answer. And the second one is okay, how do I buy it? And if you've not put your contracting process in place now, they're going to tell you to go away. Because it's going to take me 6 months to a year to get this bought. Go away. So you need to have those two things in place and ready to go when you start to go out and have conversations with organizations or agencies.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and I think that's where, the work that you've done kind of building this ecosystem, and with Carasoft and the work that we do, really you're able to bring clients like a full solution, which is smart as a business person, and bringing a lot of value to clients quickly.
Exactly.
So I want to, zoom out a bit and talk kind of more about the industry level. And an industry that you and I both do a lot of work in is cybersecurity. There's obviously a lot of crossover between government and cybersecurity. But curious in general, like what are the trends that you're paying the closest attention to? And specifically maybe ones that matter most for emerging or kind of smaller cyber vendors that are trying to compete?
So I'm seeing two trends in cyber. There was a very interesting article this morning, as a matter of fact, from the Financial Times, where CrowdStrike and one other company released their sort of threat intelligence information for 25. Amazed me at I think it was like 89% of hacks, ransomware and those sorts of things are now being launched by AI. So that is a big trend that is in the market space, like AI being used not only as how to attack an organization, but I think AI also being brought out and used into how do you defend against that, right? How do you? Yeah, I think it's a matter of speed is what I really think it's a matter of. I think if the threat actors are going to leverage AI more and more and more, I think we're going to have to add more and more and more AI to our cyber solutions to defend against that, right? So I think that's one trend that we're seeing that's going to continue to grow. The next one, which I've been talking quite a bit about, that organizations I think really need to take a look at is this notion of a fault tolerant quantum computer and what that's going to do to organizations when it comes out. Everybody goes, "Oh, quantum, that's 10 years away," or there's some estimates that now say it's 5 years away or less. And if you think about your organization and everything that you have that is covered by RSA or some sort of elliptic curve encryption, if all that is breakable tomorrow, that's the issue that quantum computing is gonna put you up against or present to you, if you will. Now, a lot of organizations go, "We have time," but if you really did an analysis and said, okay, especially larger enterprises, how much do I actually have to transition over or migrate over to these new algorithms and things that are coming out? I think you'd be surprised at how long it's going to actually take you to get that to happen. And you should probably be thinking about and starting on something like that right now.
Yeah, it's really smart. It's like in some ways hard to wrap our heads around, but you need to start, right? And I think there's an interesting thing you shared about, right, like AI keeping up with AI, right? Like the only way to keep up with the AI threats is more AI, and that's just the reality that we're in. I'm seeing a bit of like some product sophistication that is more of like building something because we can, rather than because it's kind of the biggest need or addresses the biggest pain point. So I think that's something I'm very interested. I know we have like the big cybersecurity conference RSA coming up in about a month or so. But seeing not just building but based on what's possible, because there's a lot more things that are possible to build today, but really like what do buyers actually need to prioritize to bring into their organizations and putting that on the roadmap.
Yep. I agree. It was interesting, at RSA last year, everybody had AI. It was amazing. Everybody's like, I'm not even going to say the word anymore because you know what I'm talking about. I'm tired of saying it. I think we're going to see a lot of that this year, but I think we will see more and more on the risk of quantum coming as well. Just watch, and we'll chat at RSA when I see you out there, and we'll see if I'm correct or not.
Yeah, we'll have to do a debrief. Hopefully, we don't just see AI plastered everywhere, because I think not that it's table stakes. I don't want to minimize it, but I think it's hard for then the target audience walking through the trade show floor to figure out like what actually matters to them. So I left last year's event really thinking, yes, part of it is a messaging problem, but part of it's also a focus problem. Like for who specifically is this designed for, and not trying to be kind of all things to all people. And I think that's a message that's not specific to cybersecurity, but certainly prevalent in other facets of tech as well these days.
I agree.
We just talked about cyber and AI. I want to talk a little bit more about you as a leader, and just hear a bit of how do you describe your leadership style? Do you think it's evolved, and kind of what's driven that evolution, if so?
My leadership style, and it has evolved, right, over time, right? There was a time when I was a leader when I needed to be involved in the details of everything, right? I would probably say I was a little overbearing earlier in my career. And what that kind of taught me is it's no way to properly scale an organization, right? If you can't trust your employees, if you can't set a standard, set a strategy, make sure your employees have what they need to be enabled. And I'm not saying just like push them off and then say, hey, go. You have to have checkpoints as you go along, but let them do the work. And just keep in the back of your mind that there's multiple paths to get to the objective. You may not do it that way. They may do it a different way, but you just need the outcome at the end of the day, right? And so that's been probably one of the biggest things that I have shifted over time for me. And it's helped me really scale the organization so I can spend time focusing on, other areas that kind of need help getting other things up, running, and going, because I've been able to enable my employees and then let them kind of run with oversight, right? And guidance. That's been one big thing. I think the other thing that I learned early in my career that's kind of helped me is letting your employees see that the things you're asking them to do are things that you would do yourself as well if you had to, right? That's the other thing. It's like, hey, nothing is beneath me. Uh, I know what you're doing. I've done something similar. I've done the exact same thing earlier in my career. So I'm not asking you to do something that I wouldn't do either, right? That's I think the second thing. And then the third thing is, I think, which has really helped me is transparency. Like, hey, this is the company, right? This is where we're at. These are the things that we're doing. Um, just be openly, transparent with them about a lot of things in the company. And that, I think that just gets everybody on the same team and all rowing in the same direction. And we all know what we're up against, right? Is kind of my third thing there. So don't know if that answered your question, but those are some of the things that I look at and think about as a leader.
I like that. On a number of the different things that you shared, it brought examples to mind from kind of my own experience. And I have one boss in particular. I haven't had that many because I've been running Magnitude. I realize now for 30% of my life, which is a little crazy. But
Yeah, we started when we were 12.
exactly. So I guess maybe 60% of my life. But we hadn't been working together for that long. This was while I was at Forrester Research, and um, we were at an event, and I see my boss like stuffing like bags at a trade show, and she was a senior director, etc. And I just loved that she she's like, oh, I'm so glad you found me. I'm just like finishing up to help the events team. I guess someone was sick, and she just offered to help, and just having that mindset of like nothing's like too good for you, nothing's beneath you. Still roll up your sleeves where needed. But there's also the balance of a good leader that knows when to kind of roll up your sleeves and dive in, and when to let the team kind of run with things.
There's a couple of them, right? One that I always take is the harder I work, the luckier I seem to get. So I have that written down. I keep that in front of me. Another one is if you don't like the future, then build your own. Right. So I think that's another good one to kind of think about. But I think the last thing that, the advice that I'd give is you can't do this all on your own. Right. You need a team, especially if you want to scale and you want to grow. And you need to make sure you take the time to build the right team. Right. This person who you're interviewing may be the greatest seller in the world, maybe, the best marketer in the world. But if they're not going to fit in your team and work as your team, you're not going to get as far. You'll get further if everybody is together and you work together versus this one standout over here that doesn't fit in the team, but they're just really good. In the long run, that's going to end up hurting you. So I've left positions open in the past until we found the right, like, look, you can't hire somebody that's awful, right? Or somebody that's just mediocre. You got to hire somebody that's good. But you got to make sure you take the time to make sure they're going to fit with your team and what you want to do there. That's really going to help as you grow.
Yeah. I think that's great advice. I think culture can be construed sometimes as fluffy, but it's essential. And right to your point, like the team all needs to be working well together, and it becomes kind of, especially as a services business, that is what you bring to the market.
I think the one final thing I'll give you is, as a leader, you can't be afraid to also like jettison people, meaning I've got a high performing team here and I've got somebody that's not pulling their weight. I've coached them. They're still not pulling their weight. I need to let them go because that does nothing but bring the rest of the team down. Right. And all of a sudden they start talking about how this person's not doing their job and they're not focused on work. They're not, everybody's rowing in the same direction, trying to get to the objective. There's other things that are coming up or other things that they're talking about. So you got to keep that in mind too, that, hey, if somebody's not pulling their weight, it's your responsibility as a leader to make sure they do, or to work them out of the organization so you can keep those that are there, those that are working, continue to keep them motivated.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. I think it goes for toxic employees, poor performers, not dedicated. So it's not the fun side of leadership and management, but it definitely is essential.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, this has been great, Harvey. So much amazing dialogue in what you shared. So thank you for all of that. And as we wrap up today's conversation, can you let listeners know how they can reach you if they want to get in touch?
Yeah, sure. You can email me at Harvey, Harbey at Marion, Marion -Square, Square.com, or just hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn as well.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, thank you. This was a great conversation and I loved so much of what you shared, but especially enjoyed hearing about the changes that have taken place in government, what's coming with AI in cyber, and the conversation we were just having about leadership. So thank you for that. And thank you too to everyone who's listening. If today's conversation sparked something for you, and I'm sure that it did, please pass this along to another leader. We know that insights like these fuel fresh thinking and help all of us drive real evolution in our companies and in ourselves. So thank you again, Harvey. This has been another amazing conversation on Shift and Thrive. See you all next time. That's a wrap for this week's episode. For show notes and more, visit shiftandthrivepodcast.com. A special thank you to our sponsor, Magnitude Consulting, bringing you the thinking power of a growth consultancy and the getting it done power of a full-service marketing agency to help B2B companies fuel their growth. For more information on Magnitude and to get your complimentary transformation readiness assessment, visit magnitudeconsulting.com/getready. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next week.